I feel like we usually think about microplastics entering our bodies through food and water. However, synthetic clothes, carpets, curtains, bedding, even the fluffiest stuffed animals that are usually made of polyester, all of these are forms of plastic, and they shed microplastic fibers into our household air as well as the dust that accumulates around our home. For this video, I spoke to Professor Barbro Melgert from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. Her lab has been investigating a largely unanswered question. What happens when our lung tissue encounters these microplastic textile fibers? And the results of their research have permanently changed the way that I live, especially now that I have a child whose body is growing, developing, and responding to the environment every single day. All right, enough yip yapping from me, let's dig in. This video is sponsored by Branch Basics. Hey guys, it's Robin, and welcome to the Science of Self-Care, where we fall in love with the practice of taking care of ourselves so we can live better longer. I am very excited for this video, and I've been sitting on this info for a little bit because I had the opportunity to interview an expert all about this topic. Unfortunately, the audio from that interview is terrible. I am blaming AirPods for this. Needless to say, I do not want audio issues to get in the way of sharing this really valuable and very relevant information. So I'm going to add little bits of her interview throughout this video. And for the rest, I'm going to be telling you guys what she shared. I'm going to be paraphrasing some things. And I think this is one of the most practical episodes I've made in a while. There are some clear takeaways at the end of this video that can help you improve the health of your home and the microplastic pollution in your home. Now, before we get into microplastics, I want to share one little way that I like to keep my home healthy and clean, and that is with Branch Basics. I am so in love with Branch Basics because it is simple and effective. It is a line of fragrance-free, plant and mineral-based home cleaning products, and the system is really centered around one biodegradable, multi-purpose concentrate. And this can replace many of the conventional, often overly harsh cleaners we have in our home. So Branch Basics offers these beautiful, durable glass bottles with a little line that says water. You literally just fill this up with water, and then you fill the rest up to the next line that says soap with this concentrate. And again, depending on the dilutions, you can make different products. All-purpose cleaner, a bathroom cleaner, a glass cleaner, a hand soap. I specifically remember reading research that children who are raised on traditional farms tend to have lower rates of asthma and allergies. That really stayed with me because it illustrates that a healthy home does not need to be overly sterile. So of course, I want our home to be clean, but I also want to be really thoughtful about what we're using to clean it. Especially now that my baby is putting his mouth on everything and putting everything in his mouth. If you'd like to try Branch Basics yourself, you can click the link below, scan this QR code, or use code SELFCARE at checkout for 15% off your first order of any Branch Basics products. Thank you, Branch Basics, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to microplastics. So why this topic is so exciting and also a bit disturbing to me is because it's such a new area of research. I hear all the time about microplastics in water, in food containers, but I'm not often hearing about how textiles in our home can influence the health of our lungs. And that is exactly what Dr. Barbro Melgert specializes in.
So my name is Barbro Melgert. I'm a professor at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, and I work on the immune system of the lung and trying to figure out why people develop lung diseases and what causes them.
Professor Melgert's work focuses specifically on respiratory immunology. So this is essentially how our lungs and our immune system respond to the things that we inhale. Because it would be unethical to deliberately expose people to microplastic particles and have them breathe it in, she uses a really cool technology in her lab called organoids. Using organoids, which are really cool mini model lungs that are grown in a lab from actual human and mouse lung cells, she is able to study what happens when these lung cells are exposed to various microplastic fibers.
And to our surprise, polyester was having some negative effects, the outgrowth of these structures, but nylon was very detrimental, but only to these airway structures, only to the tubes, not to the air sacs. So what we then did was we wondered, is this the particles themselves, these fibers themselves that we added to the structures? Or is it something leaching from plastic? Because plastic contains lots of additives, and these can leach out and can be very toxic. Think of BPA and phthalates, all these endocrine disruptors known to have all these negative health effects.
So her lab actually did the experiment again, but this time they didn't expose the lung tissue to the fibers themselves, but to a liquid that had come in contact with the nylon fibers. And shockingly, the negative effects still remained. So essentially, her research revealed that it wasn't the physical nylon particles that were altering the way these epithelial cells were behaving, but it was actually some chemical compounds that is being leached from these nylon fibers. And this mystery chemical, which is still being investigated, is upregulating a gene called HOXA5. This plays an important role in cell differentiation and is probably the reason why the nylon fibers are especially disruptive to the development of these airways. So it seems like there's something coming out of nylon that is disrupting airway development. And it's important to note that plastics are not composed of polymers alone. They also contain dyes, plasticizers, stabilizers, processing aids, flame retardants, and many other intentionally or even unintentionally added substances. A United Nations report has identified more than 13,000 chemicals associated with plastics and plastic production, and only 7,000 of them, about half of them, have actually been evaluated for hazardous properties. And more than 3,200 of these have shown at least one property of concern. So this doesn't mean that every piece of plastic contains all or even most of these chemicals, or even a chemical that has been shown to have some sort of detrimental effect, but it does illustrate just how complicated plastics can be. Another thing that's important to note is that our lungs don't solely consist of epithelial cells, as in the cells that make up our lungs' inner lining. The lungs also contain immune cells that are designed to protect against the things that we inhale. So specifically, macrophages are going around our lungs, engulfing foreign particles, and typically they attempt to break those foreign particles down.
I mean, we grew up as humanity with particles that can be degraded by, at least most of them can be degraded by these cells. Of course, plastics cannot be degraded by our cells, so these cells become stressed. And they start producing factors that ask other cells from the immune system to come into the lungs to help them get rid of those stupid particles that they ate. And that then induces inflammation in your lungs. And that has been shown in multiple animal studies, is that indeed when you overload the animals with particles, then indeed you get lung inflammation.
So to kind of summarize some interesting findings, the epithelial cells of our lungs seem to respond to some sort of chemical that is being leached from the nylon, and the macrophages are more disturbed by the physical presence of these particles that they cannot digest and break down. And when they cannot break down these particles, they become stressed and release chemical signals that are calling for reinforcement. It's creating an inflammatory response.
First of all, I think the most important thing is that we try to reduce our plastic use. Start at the source. If we use less plastic and don't throw it away, then we cut the problem at the base. But that often is very difficult because everything is made of plastic these days. So if you want to protect yourself, just ventilating your home not only protects yourself against microplastics, but also other gases that accumulate in your house. So that ventilation is always a good idea.
I have another video on ventilation, which I will link below. This is just so important for all around health and productivity.
I think if by having this conversation, I've made people aware of the fact that air quality is important and that microplastics are not just in the sea and affecting marine life, they're also in the air, and that we are being exposed to them, then I think I've done a good job.
Talking to Dr. Melgert really made me think about how much plastic is just a part of our everyday. And I actually want to take a little field trip over to probably the most American home lifestyle store on earth, just to see how many things are actually made of organic materials versus some form of plastic. So we are currently outside of one of the most popular home goods stores in the United States, Target. I think this is where a lot of people go to shop for textiles, bedding, towels, clothing. So I'm gonna go around the store, look at different textile pieces that catch my eye, and then I'm going to check the ingredients. I'm hoping I find some cotton pieces, but I'm guessing that a lot of this is going to be some form of plastic. So I began my perusing in the clothing section, and I was actually shocked to see that there were so many cotton pieces, either 100% cotton or 95% cotton. Of course, there's a whole nother conversation to have about dyes that are used on cotton and the way that cotton is treated with different finishing products that can also have negative effects on our health. But that is a topic for a different video. For now, I was just pleasantly surprised to see a lot of cotton clothing. However, the story quickly changed when I headed to the home goods section. All of the really soft, fuzzy, plushy blankets, all 100% polyester plastic. So almost all of the throw blankets were 100% polyester. This blanket, plastic. This pillow, plastic. This plastic. This plastic. You get the point.
The misconception that that trap I also fell into is that recycling is a solution to the plastic problem. But with all the difficult journey we've been having trying to identify this unknown component in plastic, I think it's a really bad idea to put together all sorts of plastics that you don't know where they came from, and we make the mix even more complicated. So it's impossible to tell what the health effects would be. So people are made to feel good about recycling, but we're just collecting the plastic and dumping it for somebody else to deal with, and we're not really solving the problem. So I think we really have to make sure that we use less plastic, especially new plastic.
This conversation specifically has stuck with me so much, and I think about it constantly as I've been building a home for myself, my husband, and my baby. So these are all my baby's little stuffies, and they are all made of cotton, and then I feel so much better when he's sucking on them and playing with them or cuddling with them. There's no microplastic, tiny little fibers that are potentially getting into his developing lungs. Again, this is all speculative because this research hasn't been done on developing humans.
If I don't know the answer, then better safe than sorry, I think, is our best approach. And try to limit your exposure. We know that microplastics have been found in placentas, so it means that they can cross the barrier, that they can get into the fetus. And seeing these effects on development, of course, we used adult cells that sort of revert to a younger state to build these structures. So it's not a guarantee that actually in a young individual or developing individual these effects will be the same. But I mean, it's not a stretch to imagine that it could be. Knowing that these can cross the barrier and have effect on development, I think is concerning. And I would try to limit my exposure then, as if you're pregnant, or also with little children who still are developing and still need to grow their lungs.
So I'm always checking the inside tags of what the heck different materials are made of, and this makes thrift shopping so much easier because it helps me not only identify things that are healthy for my home, but also quality pieces. So I have gotten so many secondhand wool sweaters that are so durable, warm, and naturally antimicrobial, so it's just the perfect material for clothing. But none of this cost me a lot. It was all secondhand thrifted, and it's actually really fun to discover these quality pieces amidst a sea of junk at a thrift store. In addition to overhauling my closet, if there's one thing I would recommend looking into replacing if you have synthetic materials there, it would be your bed. And these sheets are really, really nice cotton sheets from this brand. I'm obsessed with them. They are so freaking good. It is a cotton satin finish that is extremely soft, and all of their sheets, they have different colors. This is the undyed cotton. All of their sheets are dyed with safe plant-based dyes. You should look at their website if you are looking for really nice textiles for your bed that are also very health conscious. Anyways, I digress. The point is, we can't fully eliminate all our exposure to plastics, but we can really be conscious of what we bring into our home and what we put on our bodies. And I want to make very clear that this video is not meant to fearmonger. I still have synthetic fabrics in my closet right now, and I don't plan to stress out about it, but I do feel like having this information has made me a more conscious consumer, and will make it easier to make healthier choices going forward. So to round this all up, here are my biggest takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, opt for natural fiber materials when possible. Here is a great list of textiles to look for. Number 2, make sure to ventilate your space well. This is just so important for all around health and productivity. Number 3, be especially mindful of textiles around developing humans, like fetuses in the womb or young children. That is why I'm a little bit more of a stickler on my baby's plushies than I am, for example, on my gym clothes. Number 4, try to buy less plastic overall, especially new plastic, because it never degrades. I would love to hear from you guys. Is this something you are already thinking about? Is this completely new to you? Please share your thoughts, your experiences, your wisdoms, your questions down below. I love hearing from you guys in the comments, and I know you guys share a lot of information with each other because I see you guys interacting in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.